Today we celebrate the life of a good man, beloved by all, remembered by many. He touched the lives of thousands through his charity work and is going to be dearly missed. Brother, son, friend. Suddenly, there came a loud crash, and the doors of the church fell through. Onto the ground, in a puff of splintered wood and dust, was my boss. My God, what on earth is going on here? I'm looking for my employee, JJ. Mr. Michaels, please, this is my brother's funeral. This is exceptionally unprofessional. You want to talk to me about being unprofessional? I'll have your job, you clout. I'll blacklist you from every company out there. You'll never live to touch another computer for as long as I live. My boss was acting deranged. I had no idea what to do about it. But my mother and father looked furious. How dare you crash a funeral and threaten my son's job? Get out of here before I throw you out. You dare not talk to me like that. I will ruin this funeral. My boss made a beeline for my brother's casket and was about to throw it to the ground. I guess he wasn't used to taking orders, so he was furious that my dad had spoken to him that way. But what my boss didn't know was that my dad was an ex-Marine, a man who wasn't used to losing fights. Within seconds, my boss was laid flat on his back, fully unconscious. The funeral went on, even as my boss was passed out on the floor. My name's JJ. I work for a small tech company and have been here for 6 years. I was friends with everyone who worked here. Our former boss, Mrs. Adeline, retired, and Mikhail took her place. From the day Michael arrived, I knew he was a bully. He would scold anyone who was even a minute late and slash the salaries of those who made the slightest mistake. I remember one time he even forced an intern to wash his car because she arrived 30 minutes late. My boss hated me in particular. We worked in cubicles, while he had a giant office at the end of the hall with a floor-to-ceiling window that allowed him to watch us. There was no mistaking it. Every day, without fail, my boss would watch me enter the building and stare me down for the first 5 minutes of the day.
What is his problem?
Same as every day, I guess. He just hates me. Janet shrugged and sat back down, but I could tell she was unnerved. She was new to the company and had only been coming into the office for the last week. She was so busy getting the lay of the land last week that she missed his behavior. Just as I was getting into the data tracking and analysis work that I do, I got a text that read, "You need to answer this call," and then my phone started ringing. It was my mom. She never calls at work, so something must have happened. Something serious. I pick up the phone.
JJ, honey, I'm so sorry to have to call and give you this bad news, but TJ was in a car crash on his way to work this morning. He didn't make it.
My world suddenly folded in on itself. I couldn't feel my body anymore, but I experienced the ugliest sensation of falling. I didn't know how far I had to reach the bottom of this pit, but suddenly my mother's voice was disappearing and it was replaced by my boss's. I blinked away the haze of grief and saw my boss leaning over me, shouting so loud there was spittle flying everywhere. How dare you take a personal call on work time? What do you think we're paying you for? You've always been a lazy worker, JJ. I'll have you fired for this. I stared at him as he continued to scream, but I didn't understand what he was saying. I was completely lost. TJ is my twin brother. We have done everything together since we were born. We learned to ride bikes together. We learned to read together. I carried him home when he broke his leg falling out of a tree. He carried me home when I broke my leg skateboarding at the park. We were lucky because we never got bored of each other. We went to university apart from one another, but we visited often and talked weekly, no matter what. I can't get my head around the idea that he's gone. You're going to be working through your lunch break to make it up to me. I cannot believe how belligerent.
Excuse me, Mr. Michaels, but actually, you can't make anyone work through their lunch break. And can't you see that JJ is in shock? I imagine he's just gotten some terrible news, and you're being very insensitive.
Listen, girl, don't presume to tell me how to do my job. I know what I'm doing. He's already tried to get out of work this week by asking for annual leave.
Isn't that something we're entitled to? In my contract?
Yes, you are. But he didn't submit the papers correctly. He misspelled one of the words. He handed it in 5 weeks in advance, instead of the 4 stated in company policy. He's always trying to skirt around his work.
That doesn't seem right. He worked so hard last week to help me get used to my job.
I ignored the conversations going on around me. I was frozen in time. My brother, my best friend, gone. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and made to leave, but my boss grabbed my arm in a bruising grip, and I was suddenly still. My brother has died. I have to go home. I need to be with my family.
Liar. You're lazy and entitled. You can't just make up fake siblings to kill off to get out of work.
I'm not making anything up. Now, if you please, my brother is dead, and I need to be with my family.
If you leave this building before it is time for you to clock out, then you can bet you'll be fired on the spot.
The boss pushed me back into my chair, and I stared up at him helplessly. He had his hands on his hips and was smirking, like he'd just won a fight. I wanted to cry, but I set my shoulders straight and nodded. Fine, I will stay and do your work, but I will be filing a complaint. This is inhumane.
I don't know who you think you are, but your complaints go to me, and I'll handle them as I see fit.
I couldn't argue because my brain was scattered. I worked for the rest of the day. My coworkers came up to me at random intervals.
JJ, man, I'm so sorry to hear about TJ.
Thank you, Tim.
I heard about your brother. May he rest in peace.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate it. My boss, however, piled on more and more work. As the day went by, I began drowning under how much work he was setting me. The sun went down, and I wasn't halfway through what he wanted me to do.
Finish this by the end of the week, or you'll lose your job.
The pile was bigger than me. I had no idea why he expected all of this from me. Did he really think I could do all this? Plan a funeral and grieve at the same time? How was I supposed to do that? My mother called me on the way home that evening and asked me when I could come home. Mom, I'm sorry. I can't get the flight over until the actual funeral. My boss is being, I don't know. I can't leave my work right now. They need me.
Honey, we need you too.
I know. I promise I'll be there for the funeral. I promise. No matter what. The next day, I went in and powered on. I didn't have lunch. I didn't even breathe, really. I just made my way through the pile as fast as I could. Soon, the pile was going down faster than it was going up, despite my boss's best efforts. On the Thursday, I walked into my boss's office, shoulders back and head high. I wasn't going to be shy about this. I had to go to my brother's funeral, otherwise I'd never be able to live with myself. Sir, tomorrow I won't be at work. I will be attending my twin brother's funeral.
Not possible. We need you tomorrow.
Not as much as my family needs me. Not as much as I need to say goodbye to my brother. I felt powerful and sick at the same time. I loved my job, and I knew that I had just sacrificed it. But at the end of the day, there was no real sacrifice. I had nothing I needed more than to give my brother the farewell he deserved. And if that meant never going back to my job, then so be it. I flew to the city where my family is based and met my parents off the plane. They gave me a hug, and I cried on their shoulders as though I were a child. I miss him so much. I miss him like I've never missed anything before in my life. Why did this have to happen?
I know, son. It's not fair.
It took us a long time to get ourselves together, and when I turned my phone back on in the back of the car, I was suddenly flooded with missed calls, emails, texts, and notifications from the work social chat. Most of it was from my boss. Threats that I was going to be fired, that he'd sue me for being so unprofessional, that he was going to make sure I regretted this. The other messages were from concerned coworkers. Apparently, my boss has signed me up for an important meeting with the heads of the parent company. I had been sent an agenda and a series of talking points so that I could best represent my company. Only my boss never warned me about this. When the phone rang again, I answered.
Where the hell are you?
I'm in my home state. I told you I would be. I have a funeral to attend.
You're lying. You just want me to look bad.
Please calm down, Mr. Michaels. There's no ulterior motive here. I just have a personal event. I never agreed to attend this meeting. That's a problem you're going to have to solve on your own, sir. He continued to scream down the phone, but I hung up. I put my phone on silent and let my head drop against the headrest. That night, I stayed awake in my old bed, TJ's empty bunk above mine silent, when it used to creak with the weight of him turning over. I couldn't see the wall light up with the telltale signs that he was still awake, or hear him muttering in his sleep. It's been years since we shared a room, but being back in my childhood home highlighted the absolute absence of him, and my throat burned. I missed my brother. The next morning, my mom loaded me up with pancakes and coffee. I was tired and not at all hungry. No one bugged me to try to eat. By the time the sun was up, the house was full. My aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, old friends, school teachers. It seemed like everyone was here to say goodbye. At midday, we formed a somber procession and made our way to the town church. We marched down the winding road and arrived at the church with its flaking yellow paint and haunting music.
Today we celebrate the life of a good man, beloved by all, remembered by many. He touched the lives of thousands through his charity work and is going to be dearly missed. Brother, son, friend.
Suddenly, there came a loud crash, and the doors of the church fell through. Onto the ground, in a puff of splintered wood and dust, was my boss.
My God, what on earth is going on here? I'm looking for my employee, JJ.
Mr. Michaels, please, this is my brother's funeral. This is exceptionally unprofessional.
You want to talk to me about being unprofessional? I'll have your job, you clout. I'll blacklist you from every company out there. You'll never live to touch another computer for as long as I live.
My boss was acting deranged. I had no idea what to do about it. But my mother and father looked furious.
How dare you crash a funeral and threaten my son's job? Get out of here before I throw you out. You dare not talk to me like that. I will ruin this funeral.
My boss made a beeline for my brother's casket and was about to throw it to the ground. I guess he wasn't used to taking orders, so he was furious that my dad had spoken to him that way. But what my boss didn't know was that my dad was an ex-Marine, a man who wasn't used to losing fights. Within seconds, my boss was laid flat on his back, fully unconscious. The funeral went on, even as my boss was passed out on the floor. Later, the chief of police, who was in attendance, woke my boss up and arrested him. I went home the following Sunday and went into work the next day to pack up my things. I don't know what happened to my boss, but I knew I wouldn't have a job if he had any say in it. To my surprise, my whole crew were standing in the lobby, and they cheered as I came through the door.
JJ, welcome back. I am Mrs. Paula from the head of the company. The CEO sent me down to assess how the company was going. From day one, you were there to help me. You are the one that holds this company up. I knew when I met you that we were going to promote you. We just never expected how easy it would be to open up that position.
But what about Mr. Michaels?
Don't you worry about him.
I got to work right away. The company flourished under my hand because I knew we worked better as a family than as a dictatorship. I was still grieving my brother, but in a way, I felt like he was the one to bring this opportunity to me. He always did say to look for the silver linings, because there always were some. It wasn't until a month later that I saw my old boss again. He was cleaning the windows of my office. He didn't say a single thing to me, but for the first time since I started working there, he didn't hurl some kind of insult at me. From the rumors I heard, the CEO gave my boss two options: either work as a janitor for 5 months or face a lawsuit. My boss chose to work as a janitor, forced to take orders from the very employees he once bullied. I often made sure to mess up my toilet and requested that he clean it twice a day. His wife left him after hearing how her husband ruined a funeral and embarrassed himself. Thanks for watching.
When I was 17, my mother died. It wasn't sudden, and it wasn't unexpected. She had been sick for a long time, battling an illness that drained her strength day by day. Watching her fade away was the hardest thing I had ever endured. Even now, I don't know what hurt more: the pain of losing her or the helplessness of knowing there was nothing I could do to stop it. She was my world. And then, just like that, she was gone. After the funeral, everything changed. My father was devastated. He tried to be strong for me, but I could see the weight of his grief pressing down on him, making him smaller, quieter. He worked hard, but his job didn't pay much. If it weren't for my mother's family, I don't know how we would have survived. They stepped in immediately, taking care of us in ways we didn't even know we needed. My uncles and aunts helped with money, food, and anything else they could provide. They made sure we never felt alone. But the person who helped the most was my Aunt Vivian. Aunt Vivian was my mother's older sister, and unlike the rest of the family, she wasn't just comfortable. She was rich. The kind of rich that meant she never had to check price tags, and people treated her like royalty wherever she went. She had built a successful business empire and had more money than she could ever spend. She didn't have children of her own, and after my mother's death, it was like she decided to take us under her wing completely. She bought us a new house. Not just any house, but a beautiful, spacious home in a good neighborhood, big enough that my father and I could have separate spaces to grieve and heal.
You need a fresh start. You can't keep living in a place where every room reminds you of her.
My father had resisted at first, but Aunt Vivian was relentless. She wanted us to move forward, to rebuild our lives, and the new house was her way of making sure we had the foundation to do that. We settled in quickly. My father continued working hard, trying to make life as normal as possible for me. And despite everything, he took care of me well. He made sure I had everything I needed, and we were okay. Not rich, not even comfortable, but we got by. Things weren't perfect, but we had each other. For 2 years, that was enough. And then, when I turned 19, my father met Rebecca. At first, I didn't mind. She seemed nice enough. She was soft-spoken, always polite, and she never tried to act like my mother. She treated my father well, and as long as he was happy, I had no reason to dislike her. The problem wasn't Rebecca. It was her daughter, Annie. Annie was my age, but that was the only thing we had in common. From the moment we met, we clashed. She was rude, entitled, and spoiled. She acted like she was better than me, even though she and her mother weren't exactly well off. She didn't like me, and I didn't like her. But while I only responded when provoked, Annie went out of her way to make sure we couldn't get along. Every conversation turned into an argument. Every interaction was a battle. She was nasty, and I had no problem returning the favor. So when Rebecca and my father got married after a year of dating, I was relieved that Annie didn't move in with us. Apparently, she preferred staying with her grandmother, and I silently thanked the universe for small mercies. For 6 months, things were okay. Not great, but manageable. And then my father died. It happened so fast that I barely had time to process it. One day he was tired, stressed, overworked, but still here. The next he was gone, collapsed at work and never woke up. The doctor said it was exhaustion. His body had been pushed too hard, too fast, for too long. He had been working extra hours, trying to provide for all of us, and in the end, it was too much. He died from being overworked. I should have known things would change after my father's death. I should have seen the signs. The way Rebecca barely looked at me during the funeral, the way she only spoke when necessary, the way she clung to the people offering their condolences as if she were the only one grieving. But I was too lost in my own pain to notice. And then, the very day after we buried my father, Rebecca changed completely. Gone was the polite, soft-spoken woman my father had married, the woman who had smiled and nodded and pretended to care. In her place was a cold, bitter stranger. At first, I thought maybe she was just grieving in her own way. Maybe she was struggling, like me, trying to figure out how to move forward. I was wrong. She wasn't struggling. She wasn't grieving. She was waiting. She'd been waiting. Waiting for the moment she could drop the act. Waiting for the moment when no one would be watching. And when she realized that Aunt Vivian and the rest of my mother's family trusted her to take care of me, she finally showed her true colors. She brought Annie into the house.
Rebecca, are you sure about this? Will you be able to take care of both girls? Of course. Jane is like a daughter to me. I would never treat her any differently from my own child.
I should have known she was lying. Because the moment Aunt Vivian left, she turned to me with a look I had never seen before. A look of contempt. That was the beginning of my personal hell. Annie wasted no time making herself comfortable. She took the biggest bedroom, which was my bedroom. I came home after a walk one evening to find my things shoved into boxes and dumped into the smallest room in the house. What is this?
Oh, I thought you'd be fine with the guest room. Annie needs space.
But this is my room.
Not anymore.
Rebecca had just stood there watching as Annie crossed her arms and looked me up and down like I was the guest in my own home. I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream. But something in Rebecca's eyes told me it wouldn't matter. So I swallowed my pride, took my things, and moved into the tiny, cramped space Annie had so generously left for me. That was just the beginning. The kitchen became another battlefield. If I left something in the fridge, Annie took it. If I tried to cook for myself, Rebecca would suddenly decide that Annie was hungry and needed to eat first. I started eating in my room just to avoid them. It didn't help. Annie would come in uninvited, throwing my clothes around, knocking things over, acting like she owned the place.
You know, you don't even belong here. This house is my mom's now, which means it's mine too.
I ignored her at first. I thought if I didn't react, she would get bored. But she didn't. She escalated. 3 months after my father's death, Annie forced me to get a part-time job. When Auntie Vivian heard about it, Annie didn't let me explain. She lied that I wanted something to take my attention away from the sadness of losing my father. That was a lie, but I had to agree with her. One evening, I came home late from my part-time job and found my mattress missing. Not just the sheets, the entire mattress. Where is my bed?
Oh, we threw it out. Annie said it was old and ugly. You should be thanking her.
Where am I supposed to sleep?
I don't know, Jane. Maybe you should start figuring things out on your own already. You know, maybe moving out or something.
That was when I knew. This wasn't just about them being cruel. They were also trying to get rid of me. The next few weeks were a nightmare. I started coming home later and later just to avoid them. But no matter what I did, Rebecca always found new ways to make my life unbearable. Rebecca made me pay rent every month from my job, and I noticed that Annie steals my credit card when I'm not home to buy herself nice outfits. She cut off the Wi-Fi. She stopped buying groceries. She even went through my things and threw away anything she thought I didn't need. And Annie? Annie enjoyed every second of it. I held on for as long as I could. I told myself that I could endure it, that I could push through, that maybe, just maybe, things would get better. But they never did. Rebecca and Annie only got worse. They wanted me gone, and they weren't even trying to hide it anymore. So, I did the one thing I should have done from the start. I called Aunt Vivian. When she answered the phone, I burst into tears. I told her everything. The way they treated me, the way they took my room, my food, my bed, everything. By the time I finished, Aunt Vivian was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke.
Pack your things, I'm coming.
30 minutes later, she was at the house. Aunt Vivian stormed in like a force of nature, her heels clicking against the floor, her sharp eyes scanning the house. I had never seen Rebecca look nervous before.
Oh, Vivian, what a surprise. Cut the act, Rebecca. Jane told me everything. Do you have anything to say for yourself? Huh? I think there's been a misunderstanding. No, there hasn't. I will check and see for myself.
Aunt Vivian looked around. She checked the rooms, saw the difference between where I and Annie were sleeping. She also checked the fridge and saw how empty it was. She turned back to Rebecca and Annie.
You two are disgusting.
I mean, Jane could have told you if she had a problem.
Shut your mouth, you little rat.
Rebecca opened her mouth to argue, but Aunt Vivian wasn't having it.
You have no right to be here. This house was given to Jane's father. He's dead now. You were only allowed to stay here because we thought you were good people. Clearly we were wrong.
And then she did something I never expected. She dashed to Rebecca's bedroom and grabbed her suitcase. She came down and threw it out the front door.
Vivian, please don't do this. I beg you, please. Out. Now.
Rebecca looked at Annie, then back at Aunt Vivian, as if trying to gauge whether she was serious. When she saw the seriousness, she pulled her daughter and both of them knelt down, begging. But Aunt Vivian didn't listen. Together, we threw the rest of their things outside.
Get out before I call the cops and never come back.
They had to leave. They had no choice. And just like that, they were gone. Aunt Vivian didn't let me stay in that house a second longer.
You're coming with me. You'll stay at my place until I finish preparing your documents for college abroad.
Wait, what?
I was already making arrangements. I wanted to leave the house to them, but they're fools.
For the first time in years, I felt safe. I was finally free. But Rebecca and Annie weren't done. A few nights later, they came back. They must have thought I was still in that house. They came with acid, but they weren't skilled at climbing. When they tried to scale the fence, they lost their balance. The acid spilled and poured on them. Annie screamed in pain. Half her face was burned. Rebecca, too. Her fingers were melted. Neighbors heard them. They rushed out, but the gate was locked, so they couldn't get in. They had to call Aunt Vivian. We both arrived within minutes. I was shocked to see them in so much pain and tears. The acid had done its damage.
What the hell happened here?
They didn't even try to lie. They confessed everything. The crowd turned on them immediately, throwing insults and spitting in disgust. They also recorded videos, labeled them as evil, and posted them online. Aunt Vivian didn't say a word. She just pulled out her phone and called the cops. Rebecca and Annie were arrested that night. After getting little treatment, they were later charged with burglary and attempted assault and went to jail to serve 8 years each. They had learned their lesson the hard way. We heard rumors that while in jail, inmates called them monsters and mocked them because the acid had destroyed part of their face, making them look ugly. I also heard that my dad's ghost haunted them constantly in prison. Inmates reported them as insane, and they were often taken to a psychiatrist. Thanks for watching.
One morning, about a month after our last confrontation, I walked out to the barn and found something strange. The cattle were acting nervous, moving in erratic patterns like they'd been spooked. I headed over to the water trough, and that's when I saw it. A pile of some strange powder scattered around the edge. It didn't take a genius to figure out what it was. I crouched down, scooping a bit of it into a bag to have it tested later, but I had a sinking feeling in my gut. Someone had tried to poison my herd. I called the vet immediately. Hi, my name is Steven, and I've lived on my farm for close to 15 years now. And until last spring, things were peaceful. It's the kind of life I always wanted. Quiet, steady work, and a sense of pride in knowing the land was mine. The house wasn't much, but it had enough room for me and my dogs, and the pastures stretched far enough to keep a small herd of cattle. My closest neighbor, Hank Reeves, had owned the farm next door since before I moved in. He kept to himself mostly, though I'd see him around town from time to time. We'd wave, maybe exchange a few words, but that was the extent of our relationship. That all changed when Mark Calder bought the place after Hank passed away. Mark was an odd sort of guy right from the start. He didn't come around to introduce himself like most folks would when moving to a new place. Instead, he kept his distance, always looking out over his land like he was sizing it up, figuring out what he could do with it. I didn't think much of it at first. Everyone has their quirks, and being a little strange isn't a crime. But soon I realized Mark was more than just quirky. He was downright eccentric. It started small. He'd plow his fields at odd hours of the night, the sound of his tractor rumbling through the dark, waking me up at 2 or 3 in the morning. I told myself it wasn't worth worrying about. Everyone has their own way of doing things. But the real trouble began the day I found him standing on my side of the property line. I'd been out checking the fence that ran between our land, making sure it was holding up after a storm had passed through the night before. That's when I saw him, standing there with his hands on his hips, looking at the dirt. Hey, Mark, everything all right? Your fence is a bit crooked. Yeah, no. Crooked? It looks pretty straight to me. It's very crooked. It's leaning a bit onto my side. If I were you, I would have it torn down and remade, but put on your own property rather than mine. That fence has been there since I bought the place. It's on the property line. Maybe you didn't notice, but I think you're taking a bit more than your fair share. If I didn't know better, I would assume that you've been slowly moving the fence and slowly stealing some of my land from me. I was stunned. The idea that I was encroaching on his land was ridiculous. I'd had the property surveyed when I first moved in. I knew exactly where the property line was. I would never do that. Plus, you would have noticed me moving this fence. It's incredibly long. That fence is right where it's supposed to be. You think so, huh? You saying that I'm crazy? Well, I happen to know that not only have you been slowly moving it and stealing my land, but that you have also stolen some of my cattle too. That is ludicrous. I would never do that. Uh-huh. Sure you wouldn't. Well, you just watch your back there, bud. That was the first time I realized something was off about Mark. He wasn't just peculiar. He was looking for trouble. I walked away that day, thinking it was a one-time thing. I figured he was just trying to test his new neighbor, see if he could push me around a little. But it wasn't long before the real battle began. Over the next few weeks, I noticed small changes around the fence line. At first, it was just a few stakes moved a few inches into my side of the property. Then it was pieces of the fence itself that seemed to shift overnight, posts leaning in Mark's direction one day and towards me the next. I'd fix them, only to find them moved again a few days later. One morning, I found the wire fence cut clean through, a long strip of it lying on the ground like some invisible hand had sliced it during the night. Angrily, I marched over to Mark's house. When he opened the door, He looked at me with that same infuriatingly calm expression. "What can I do for you, neighbor?" "You can stop cutting my fence for starters. I know that you think that the fence is on your property, but we had the land surveyed, and the fence marks the border between our lands. Please stop moving it." "Cutting your fence? I don't know what you're talking about." Don't play dumb with me. That fence isn't moving on its own." "You're awful paranoid, friend. Maybe you ought to relax a little." That was it. I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere with him by talking, so I started documenting everything, taking pictures of the fence, marking the boundary line more clearly, even talking to the local sheriff, though they didn't seem too interested. Property disputes between farmers were common enough around these parts, and the sheriff wasn't eager to get involved unless things got out of hand. Little did I know, things were about to get much worse. One morning, about a month after our last confrontation, I walked out to the barn and found something strange. The cattle were acting nervous, moving in erratic patterns like they'd been spooked. I headed over to the water trough, and that's when I saw it. A pile of some strange powder scattered around the edge. It didn't take a genius to figure out what it was. I crouched down, scooping a bit of it into a bag to have it tested later, but I had a sinking feeling in my gut. Someone had tried to poison my herd. I called the vet immediately, and thankfully, none of the animals had gotten sick. But it was clear what had happened. Mark was escalating. First, it was the land, then the fence. And now, he was going after my livelihood. If he'd succeeded in poisoning the cattle, I'd be ruined. This wasn't just a nuisance anymore. It was war. I went straight to Mark's house and started pounding on his front door until he opened it, a sly grin on his face.
"Something on your mind, neighbor?"
"You tried to poison my cattle. Mark, I get that you're upset about the fence, but we can settle this really easily by having someone come out and survey the land."
Now, why would I do a thing like that? I mean, I guess if your cattle died, you would go broke and have to sell your land, but I can't imagine that that could happen. You use a well for your drinking water, right, Stephen?
I stepped closer, my fists clenched at my sides. He was right. I did use a well, and I took his meaning that he could just as easily have poisoned it rather than the watering hole. He had just threatened to kill me, and over the location of a fence, no less. It was insane. "You're playing a dangerous game, Mark. I'm warning you, stay off my land and stay away from me and my animals."
You don't scare me, Stephen. You may think I'm a joke, but I'll show you. I'll make you regret ever looking down your nose at me.
I wanted to hit him right then and there, but I knew that wasn't going to solve anything. Instead, I turned and walked away, my mind racing. If he wanted to play dirty, I could play dirty too. I had no idea what had given him the idea that I thought lesser of him, but he clearly wasn't going to change his mind. Over the next few days, I went online and spoke with some friends that worked for law enforcement, and with their help, I started digging into Mark's past. Turns out, he had a long history of trouble. Lawsuits, property disputes, even a restraining order or two from former neighbors. He was a grifter, always looking for the next place to cause trouble. Armed with this knowledge, I set my plan in motion. Late one night, after Mark had turned in for the evening, I crept onto his property. I wasn't going to damage anything, but I wanted to give him a taste of his own medicine. I moved a few fence posts, just enough to throw him off. I scattered some harmless powder around his barn, enough to make him think twice about poisoning my herd again. It was petty, but it felt good. I expected some kind of retaliation, but days passed without a word from Mark. Maybe he'd gotten the message. Maybe he'd back off now that he knew I wasn't going to take his crap lying down. I was wrong. One evening, everything came to a head. I was out in the barn, finishing up the last of my chores, when I heard a noise in the bushes just beyond the tree line. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside, shining it towards the sound. That's when I saw him. Mark was crouched near the barn, holding something in his hand. A handgun. What the hell are you doing?
You've crossed the line, Stephen. This is my land, and I'll be damned if I let you take it from me.
I backed up, trying to put some distance between us. You're out of your mind, Mark. Put the gun down. But he didn't listen. I heard the crack of the handgun and saw a flash, but thankfully Mark was a terrible shot, and the bullet went wide and didn't hit me. He then started running towards me, trying to close the gap in between us to make his next shot an easier one. As he ran, Mark tripped on the uneven ground, stumbling forward. As he hit the ground, I heard the gun go off twice, and then Mark lay there on the ground still and not moving. I rushed over, my heart pounding in my chest. The handgun was under him with his hand still on the trigger. Rolling him onto his back, I saw that when he had tripped and fell, that his finger had pulled the trigger when he hit the ground, but the gun had been pointed at himself when he did. There were 2 holes in his chest, and blood was pouring freely from both of them. His eyes were wide with shock, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Mark, stay with me, I'll get help." But it was too late. His breathing slowed, and within moments, he was gone. I stood there for a few minutes before calling the sheriff. I didn't think they would believe me about what had happened, but after doing an extensive investigation, they ruled it as an accident and cleared me of any charges. Mark had been a pain in my side for months, but I never wanted it to end like this. I kept the farm, kept my animals safe, and for the first time in a long while, I could breathe easy again. The land, it seemed, had settled the score. The property next door was eventually sold, and I'm happy to say that the new owner is a much more level-headed person. It's been over 7 years, and we haven't so much as had a single disagreement yet, and I hope to keep it that way. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
It's not fair. How could you take him from us? Our kids are still so young. Because of you, they're going to grow up without a father. Are you happy? Are you satisfied?
I began to cry too. I nearly fainted because everyone in the courtroom held nothing but hatred in their eyes for me. The crying woman in front of me made me regret every single bad action I made. The judge quickly read out the charges and the sentences. It was as if he wanted to get rid of me as fast as he could. I was sentenced to life in prison. I saw my parents crying silently. I knew I disappointed them in the worst way. As for the damage to my spine, it meant I would never fully recover. Hi there, my name is Salim. I'm 27 years old, and I'm serving a life sentence in prison. You might wonder what could lead a young man like me to spend the rest of his life behind bars. To be honest, it all boils down to a string of reckless decisions that I made along the way. I grew up in a loving Muslim household with my parents. They did everything they could to give me a comfortable life. From the moment I was born, it was clear I was their pride and joy. I lived in a spacious, well-furnished home, attended the best schools, and wore clothes that were always in style. My parents spared no expense to ensure I had the best of everything. Being their last child, I was their little prince. They showered me with affection and gifts, and it was no secret that I was their favorite. My siblings, who were older and had seen the same level of care and attention fade as they grew up, often voiced their frustrations. They felt neglected compared to the attention and privileges I received. But my parents were unwavering. They saw me as their final chance to relive their parenting glory, and they were determined to make the most of it. I was their baby, and they made sure everyone knew it. They didn't hold back and indulged me in ways that were both obvious and extravagant. It was as if they wanted to prove to the world, and perhaps to themselves, that they were giving me everything they could, perhaps to make up for any regrets they might have had with their other children. I didn't realize it at the time, but this constant stream of indulgence was shaping me in ways that would eventually lead to my downfall. Looking back, I can see how their well-intentioned pampering fostered a sense of entitlement in me. It led to a life where I felt invincible and beyond the reach of consequences. As a teenager, I was the embodiment of rebellion. My parents had worked so hard to give me everything, yet I threw it all away with reckless abandon. I hung out with a group of friends who were as lost as I was. We spent our days and nights smoking, partying, and even harassing girls. Breaking rules and being rebels was thrilling. My friends and I would rather gather in rooms, inhaling unhealthy smoke, than do something better for ourselves. We avoided our prayers. Matter of fact, our religion as a whole. We laughed and joked about our exploits. It felt like we were invincible, living in a bubble of our own making. The thrill of partying all night, defying curfews, and ignoring the consequences was intoxicating. I would come home in the early hours of the morning, my clothes reeking of smoke, my head spinning from the night's excesses. My parents would be waiting for me, their faces etched with worry and disappointment. They often tried to reach out to me, to pull me back from the edge, but I was too caught up in my own world to listen.
This isn't how we raised you, Salim. Why are you hurting us? We never made you sad, so why are you doing this to us?
I could always see the hurt in her eyes, and a part of me would feel guilty. But because I felt I was doing the right thing and simply enjoying my teenage years, I would try to make her understand. I'm just hanging out with friends, Mom. You don't understand. It's just how we do things. Times have changed. This is how we have fun now.
Salim, this isn't fun. You're destroying your life and betraying your religion. Son, we're worried about you. This behavior isn't who you are. It's not the path we've worked so hard to set for you.
I knew they were disappointed and concerned. I knew they truly wanted the best for me, but at that time, I thought I was doing the right thing, and they should understand me. I get it, Dad, but you don't understand. My friends, they get me. They're my world. You should understand me too. I know you both want the best for me, but you should trust me to take care of myself. I know what's best for me. Despite my parents' heartfelt pleas, I continued down my destructive path. My mother soon noticed that I'd stopped attending prayers, much to her dismay. She tried countless times to force me to pray with her, but it never worked. My mind wasn't prepared to pray anymore. One night, after a particularly wild party, I found myself in a situation that wasn't really new, but it landed me in trouble. We were in the park, and a few of my friends began harassing a group of girls. They were making crude jokes and pushing boundaries, and I, caught up in the moment, joined in. We'd beaten one of the girls up and left her there without caring about what the consequences would be. Unfortunately for us, we were caught. The area had CCTV cameras around, and her father was in the police force. My friends and I were arrested and locked up in the police custody. My parents were devastated when they heard the news. They and my siblings rushed to the police station to see me. As I looked at them, I felt ashamed to see their looks of hurt. I saw my mom go on her knees to beg the girl's father because he refused to grant us bail. My dad begged for days. My siblings ensured to bring me food and also assure me that they'd get me out. Eventually, my parents' pleading paid off, and I was released. My other friends were also released because my parents had begged on their behalf since their own parents had given up on them and abandoned them. When we got home, my mom burst into tears. My dad was visibly broken. For the first time in my life, I saw my dad cry. And it was because of me. I resolved to change my ways. I wanted to do better for my parents because they deserved it. They didn't deserve to be getting hurt by me all the time. I stopped speaking to my friends. I reduced smoking because I couldn't just stop. I began eating healthy food. I also begged my mom to teach me how to pray again, and she was more than happy to do so. I saw my family smile happily again whenever they saw me. Their happiness motivated me to do even better. Unfortunately, that didn't last too long. My friends came over to see me one day, and that was the beginning of another rebellion. They told me about their plan to rob a bank. I was hesitant at first because I'd never stolen anything before. I knew my friends often broke into people's houses to steal things sometimes, but I was never part of them. I did all other things, but that's too dangerous. I can't do it. In fact, I'm turning a new leaf. I'm trying to make my parents happy again. If I do this, then I'm going to make them sad when they find out. They refused to give up. They told me I wouldn't need to steal anything. They said all they needed me to do was be on the lookout for them while they did the robbing. I thought about it and decided to give in. After all, I wasn't going to be robbing. I began to hang out with my friends again because we had to make plans for the operation. I was only 21 then. I would lie to my parents about wanting to take a walk. They were happy to see me trying to be healthy, and it made me feel guilty because I was lying to them. Instead of taking the walk, I would go to my friends. Being with them, I couldn't avoid smoking heavily. I would refuse the alcohol because I didn't want to get drunk, but I would smoke a lot. When I returned home, my parents were mostly already asleep or already in their rooms, so they never saw that I returned home very high. Eventually, the day of the robbery attack came. I was so nervous. My parents and siblings were away, as they'd gone to spend a week at my grandparents'. They wanted me to go with them, but I refused. I pretended to be busy with something important, so they let me meet them later. The day after they left home, I went with my friends to the bank where they were supposed to rob. When I arrived at the meeting place, my heart was racing. I had been told I was just there to help keep watch, but what happened next shocked me. One of my friends handed me a gun. I held it awkwardly.
What am I supposed to do with this? Are you going to watch out without any protection? What if the police come? You have to shoot at them if necessary. Be a man. I was terrified. I didn't want to get involved in anything dangerous. I tried to argue, but my friends threatened to tell my parents everything I'd been up to since I returned from the police custody. I didn't want them to find out. So, reluctantly, I took the gun. We drove to the bank, and I felt a knot of fear in my stomach. We were all wearing masks and dark clothes. My heart was pounding, but I tried to act calm. I held the gun tightly, though it felt strange and heavy in my hands. Inside the bank, everything seemed to go according to plan. My friends were quick and efficient, and we took control of the situation. I stayed near the entrance, trying to stay out of the way, but still keep an eye on things. As we started to leave the bank, everything began to fall apart. I heard the distant sound of sirens, which grew louder and closer. Panic set in. I glanced back and saw police cars pulling up to the bank. Officers jumped out, their guns ready. Suddenly, there was chaos. One of my friends shouted at me to run. We started to sprint, but it was clear we were too late. The police were already closing in. I was frozen with fear. I didn't know what to do. The gun in my hand felt heavier and heavier. The police began firing. My friends tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered and overwhelmed. In a blind panic, I raised the gun and started shooting at the police. My hands were shaking and my shots were wild, but I could see the police officers falling. I felt sick to my stomach as I realized what I was doing. 2 officers went down, and the sight of their bodies made me feel even more terrified. Just as I was trying to escape, I felt a sharp pain in my back. I could hear the sounds of my friends crying out as they too were hit by police bullets. I looked around and saw them falling. I blacked out from the pain and fear. When I woke up, I was in an ambulance, lying on a stretcher. The pain in my back was intense, and I could barely move. The sirens were still blaring, and I was rushed to the hospital. The court hearings were absolutely heartbreaking. Apparently, I had killed some police officers. My lawyer tried to defend me, but it was clear that the evidence against me was overwhelming. The judge read out the charges and the sentences. I was sentenced to life in prison. While it was going on, the wife of one of the cops I'd killed attacked me. Security around tried to pull her away, but her grip was so tight.
You're so evil. He has 3 children. Where do I start from with them, you wicked thing? Why did you kill him?
All I could do was apologize to her. I felt my heart shatter as I saw the pain in her eyes. I felt nothing but pure hatred.
It's not fair. How could you take him from us? Our kids are still so young. Because of you, they're going to grow up without a father. Are you happy? Are you satisfied?
I began to cry too. I nearly fainted because everyone in the courtroom held nothing but hatred in their eyes for me. The crying woman in front of me made me regret every single bad action I made. The judge quickly read out the charges and the sentences. It was as if he wanted to get rid of me as fast as he could. I was sentenced to life in prison. I saw my parents crying silently. I knew I disappointed them in the worst way. As for the damage to my spine, it meant I would never fully recover. I was left with a broken body and a broken life.
I hope you know how much you've hurt us. You're going to make us live the rest of our lives wondering how we went wrong with you. I hope you know that.
I deeply regret having you as a child, Salim. That crying woman is going to live as a widow with 3 children who are now fatherless, all because of you. The other cop was the only son and the breadwinner of his family. I hope you know that you've damaged them by killing him. I couldn't stop crying. I tried to hold my mom, but she slapped my hands off. She only stared at me once more before leaving the courtroom. I cried loudly, begging for forgiveness, but everyone abandoned me. I deserved it. I still do. It's been 6 years since I've been in jail, yet I still have decades to go, depending on how long I live for. My parents never visited me. My older siblings only visited me twice to tell me how my end had affected my parents. The first time, I was told that my dad was battling depression and my mom's health was failing. The second time, I heard that they were better, but refused to let anyone ever speak about me. They'd canceled me and didn't want to hear even my name. I cry every day because I feel like a total failure. They gave me everything, and all they received was pain. I would give anything to go back in time and correct my actions, or even get a hug from my parents and see their smiles again. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel.
And worse. If I did fight back, things would only get worse. When Julia wanted a car for her birthday, they bought her one immediately, but I had to take the bus or walk everywhere I needed to go. At home, my aunt made me do all the chores, while Julia spent the entire day watching TikTok. I was the one cooking and cleaning while she did nothing. I remember one time when my aunt refused to take me to the doctor, insisting that I was being dramatic, even though I was seriously ill. As a result, I ended up missing school for 2 days. I used to believe that family was supposed to love and support you, that no matter what happened, they would always have your back. I don't believe that anymore, not after what my cousin Julia did to me. It truly was an unforgivable thing. We weren't just cousins, we were raised as sisters. After my parents died in a car accident when I was 5, my aunt and uncle took me in. Julia, their only daughter, was 2 years older than me. From the moment I moved into their house, she made it clear that I didn't belong. On the surface, Julia was perfect. She was beautiful, charming, and talented. Everyone adored her, teachers, neighbors, especially my aunt and uncle. Meanwhile, I was just the orphan, the extra mouth to feed. I quickly learned that my place in the family was to stay quiet and out of the way. In the beginning, the way that Julia and my aunt and uncle would treat me was annoying, but it wouldn't remain that way for long. She would take my things, clothes, books, even the little jewelry I had that belonged to my mother. If I ever complained, she would pout and my aunt would tell me I was being selfish. But I had so few things to begin with and she had much more than I did. If anything, for every shirt I had, she had 8. For every piece of jewelry I had, she had 10. Even as children, I knew that it was just a power move. She didn't actually need to borrow my stuff, but she knew that it bothered me.
Fran, you should share with Julia. You're lucky to have a home here. The least you can do is be generous. Or did those parents of yours raise a selfish little brat?
I'm not being selfish. It's just that whatever she borrows, she doesn't give it back. And I have so little to begin with.
That isn't true. She's lying.
Fran, how dare you say such nasty things to your cousin? You should be ashamed.
Julia, of course, was never expected to be generous in return. I would beg her to borrow clothes since I had so few, and she would tell me off. I constantly had to wash my clothes in bathroom sink so that I would have clean clothes since I had so few. As we got older, her cruelty became more calculated. At school, Julia spread rumors about me. It was so bad that it turned the entire school against me. I never felt so alone and hopeless.
Fran is obsessed with me. She copies my clothes, my hair, everything. It's kind of creepy.
What a complete loser. Why did your family take her in?
I don't know why. And the worst thing is that she is a massive thief. She constantly steals from my parents. That, and she does drugs too.
She's the absolute worst. It didn't matter that everything that she said was a lie. People believed her. And I really didn't know that she was the one that was spreading the rumors until much later. I just thought that everyone in our school naturally hated me. But it got so much worse when she found my diary and read it out loud at a party she threw when our parents were away. She had gathered a crowd and mocked my every word, exaggerating things to make me look pathetic.
Oh, listen to this, guys. I wish someone would notice me the way people notice Julia. She's so lucky.
Well, you are lucky that you aren't her. Although being related to her is almost just as bad.
Oh, and she has a crush on Tommy. As if someone as ugly as her could ever hope to date Tommy.
Everyone laughed. I ran to my room, humiliated, while Julia basked in the attention, reading to all her guests my most intimate details. It was such a horrific violation, but I couldn't stop her and no one cared if my feelings were being hurt. Then there was my 16th birthday. I didn't expect much. I had learned by then that Julia's birthday was the only one that mattered, but I had hoped for at least a small celebration. The morning of my birthday, Julia told me my aunt and uncle had planned a surprise party for me at the park. I was genuinely shocked that they would do anything special for me, but she sold it really well, and by the time that she told me all about the event, I was convinced. Excited, I went there, only to find nothing. I wish that I could say that I wasn't devastated, but I was. I knew that I shouldn't get my hopes up, but I had hoped that for once that my family would actually treat me like family, and they once again showed me cruelty. I waited for an hour before I realized Julia had lied. When I got home, she was laughing about it with her friends.
Oh my God, you actually went. That's so embarrassing. As if we would hold a celebration for you. Even your parents knew you were a loser. They died just so they could get away from you.
I wanted to scream, to fight back, but I knew no one would believe me, and worse. If I did fight back, things would only get worse. When Julia wanted a car for her birthday, they bought her one immediately, but I had to take the bus or walk everywhere I needed to go. At home, my aunt made me do all the chores, while Julia spent the entire day watching TikTok. I was the one cooking and cleaning while she did nothing. I remember one time when my aunt refused to take me to the doctor, insisting that I was being dramatic, even though I was seriously ill. As a result, I ended up missing school for 2 days. By the time we were in our 20s, I had done everything I could to escape her. I worked hard, got my own tiny apartment, and built a small group of friends who knew me as me, not Julia's cousin. Julia, meanwhile, had become entitled and reckless. She partied constantly, racked up massive credit card debt, and treated people like stepping stones. Then, one day she showed up at my apartment, acting unusually nice.
Hey, Fran. It's been such a long time since we've hung out.
What are you talking about? We've never hung out.
Of course we have, but hey, listen. Since I'm here, I need your help. I'm in a little bit of a financial bind. I was hoping you could loan me some money.
You're kidding, right? Julia, you've never worked a day in your life, so you have no idea how hard it is to make money. So why would I loan you money?
Wow, so much for family loyalty.
You can't be serious. How about this for family loyalty? I slammed the door in her face. That was very satisfying, but it was a big mistake. A week later, police officers showed up at my job. At first, I wasn't nervous as I never break the law. I began to get concerned. But once they started asking me difficult questions...
Fran Carter?
Yes, that's my name.
You're under arrest for credit card fraud and identity theft.
What? That's impossible. I didn't do anything.
Just come with us. We'll sort this all out at the station.
I knew that I was innocent, but they didn't care. They had proof. At the station, they showed me bank statements, credit card applications, and even security footage of someone who looked exactly like me withdrawing money from an ATM. I instantly knew that it was Julia. But I didn't know how to convince them of it. She had stolen my identity. I tried to explain, but no one listened. To make things worse, when the police contacted my aunt and uncle, they backed Julia up.
Fran has always been troubled. She's always been jealous of Julia. It's really sad, actually.
I was thrown in jail overnight, humiliated and terrified. But I wasn't alone. Caleb, my best friend, bailed me out the next morning. He had already been working on proving my innocence once he heard what had happened to me. Like me, he knew that I was being set up, and he set out to help me prove my innocence. He found security footage from a gas station near Julia's favorite club, showing her using one of the stolen credit cards. With the help of a private investigator, he tracked bank records proving that money had been transferred from my account to hers, and that she had taken out dozens of credit cards in my name, and had forged my signature in order to get them. And most importantly, he had a recording. 2 weeks earlier, Julia had drunkenly bragged to a mutual acquaintance about her plan. I couldn't believe how much evidence he was able to gather.
Fran's such an easy target. She's so boring and responsible. No one would ever suspect her.
Oh my God, Julia, you're such a nasty bitch. That's such a great plan, and it's hilarious. Caleb took everything to the police. Within days, Julia was arrested. She tried to lie her way out of it, but this time, there was too much evidence. She was sentenced to 13 years in prison. But that wasn't enough for me. Julia had spent years ruining my life. It was time to return the favor. I made sure everyone knew what she had done. I posted everything on social media, every piece of evidence, every lie she had told. People from our past, old classmates, distant relatives, started commenting, sharing their own stories of Julia's manipulations. Her reputation was in shambles, but I wasn't done. Julia had always cared about appearances. She had been planning to marry into a wealthy family, the kind of people who didn't tolerate scandal. So I made sure to tell her rich fiancé and his entire family everything that she had done. When they found out, their reaction was catastrophic. Her fiancé dumped her and his entire family cut all ties. I was able to find a lawyer that represented me in suing Julia. She had, after all, committed fraud in my name and had gotten me arrested, and I assumed that it should cost her something. Luckily, a judge agreed, and he awarded me $30,000, which allowed me to pay off some debt while also going on a well-deserved vacation. When she got out of prison, she had nothing. No friends, no money. My aunt and uncle, once her biggest offenders, were too embarrassed to take her back in, and even they ostracized her. They didn't have it easy from the public either. When people found out they had always supported Julia, they were attacked on social media, and their house was even vandalized. Eventually, they had to flee to a different state. To avenge myself, when I found out Julia was trying to get a job, I set her up with a fake job interview in a faraway state, promising a huge salary and amazing benefits. She was thrilled and immediately booked a flight. But when she arrived at the address, her excitement turned to horror. The company headquarters was nothing more than an abandoned warehouse. Thanks for watching.